I was like, whoa, is this an error? What is going on near Antarctica right now is not just a normal little tremor. And I thought maybe this is a glitch in the system, that they have two magnitude 6.0 earthquakes there. But nope, it wasn't a glitch. So two strong earthquakes just struck basically the same remote underwater plate boundary in the Southern Ocean, only about 10 minutes apart. And both were around magnitude 6.0, and both were shallow, and both hit the Western Indian-Antarctic Ridge. This is a place most people probably have never heard of, because it is like hidden under one of the most remote oceans on Earth. But that doesn't mean that it's not important. So geologically, this is not an empty ocean at all. So this is where the planet is literally tearing open. We're not talking about a subduction zone. So the earthquake struck at roughly 6 miles below the seafloor, roughly 10 kilometers, along a massive underwater mountain chain between the Antarctic plate and the Australian plate system. And that's why this is such an interesting spot for something like this to happen. So this is not a random earthquake, or not two random earthquakes in the middle of nowhere. This is basically a double hit on a spreading ridge. So what's going on in Antarctica? A plate boundary, that's what we're dealing with here, where the sea floor is being pulled apart and magma's rising from below, and new ocean crust is created. So are we seeing some volcanic activity here? Is that the reason for these quakes? I mean, we have this massive underwater volcano that we're dealing with right now in the Bismarck Sea. Check that out in the end screen, by the way, because that thing is really, really crazy. But think about here. Think about this here for a second. Under the cold Southern Ocean near Antarctica, the crust is indeed cracking, it's stretching, and it's rebuilding itself. So today, that system has released these two strong magnitude 6 earthquakes, almost, we have to say, back to back. And the first quake hit around 1451 UTC, and then about 10 minutes later, another 6.0 struck nearby. And if you look at the USGS map, it's the same dot. They don't even distinct the two dots. So that kind of pairing has a special name. It's often called an earthquake doublet. So two similar sized quakes happening close together in time and in space, right? Location where the epicenter is. And usually, yeah, because the same fault zone or a connected fracture system is adjusting. And okay, but why is it adjusting, and from what? Here is where that story particularly gets very interesting. Mid-ocean ridges like this one are not like, for example, the dangerous one that we always fear, the Japan Trench, Cascadia, or in Chile, these subduction zones. They're not gigantic subduction zones where basically one plate dives beneath the other one and produces these megathrust earthquakes, magnitude 8, 9 plus megathrust earthquakes. Here the danger is a different kind of danger, but it's still danger. So the plates are moving apart, the crust is thinner, and the earthquakes are shallow. So this ridge here is cut by long fracture zones and transform faults that are also there. Basically, huge blocks of ocean floor are sliding past each other. So when we are seeing what we're seeing today, like two large magnitude 6 earthquakes in this setting, the question is definitely not, is Antarctica about to split open tomorrow? No, that's not the danger, but the better question that we should ask is, why? Why did this section of the ridge release two strong earthquake shocks so close together? That is unusual. So because at a spreading ridge that we're dealing with here, the stress builds in two ways. So first, of course, the plates are pulling apart. Yeah, that makes sense. But second, the offset faults between like these ridge segments, they can lock. They can get locked and loaded, they can bend, and then they can suddenly snap, and we see an earthquake. So that snap is what produces these shallow ocean earthquakes in this area. And because especially the Western Indian-Antarctic Ridge is so remote, this is the good thing. We do not have cities that are shaking. We have, but also no emergency cameras and no like viral street videos of that, right? But the lack of footage, and we have to make that clear, that does not mean at all that nothing has happened here. So it means the event happened in one of the least watched places on Earth. That, of course, epicenter was basically far south of Australia in the open Southern Ocean. That is roughly around 50 degrees south latitude, 139 degrees east latitude. So that places it in the cold ocean gateway between Australia and Antarctica. This is a region where the seafloor records basically that long breakup between Antarctica and the surrounding plates. So this is the same planetary system that opened oceans, split ancient continents, and still controls where earthquakes and underwater volcanic activity occur today. So now, does this mean a major tsunami is expected at this point? No. A magnitude 6 quake on a mid-ocean ridge is usually not the same tsunami threat as a major subduction earthquake, because the floor is being displaced in a vertical way in a subduction zone earthquake. This ridge is more about pulling apart and sideways movement on the seafloor. So that is not what the danger is. So no confirmed tsunami is heading anywhere towards land. But the danger is that this remote underwater plate boundary just produced a strong double rupture. And that tells us that the stress is actively being released along the southern edge of the Indo-Australian and Antarctica plate system. And we must be careful about this, right? Some people I know, they will now make videos and they will say, the whole planet is destabilizing and it's because of this and that and that. No. Guys, please take a breather. This is too far. But it's also wrong to ignore these two earthquakes, right? These events do fit into a bigger pattern where we have been watching the following, like strong shallow earthquakes along oceanic plate boundaries, many of them far from major population centers. But it's still important because they show that the crust is actually adjusting. We do have earthquakes right now around the broader Australian plate boundary region, including we see earthquakes in New Zealand, Tonga still aftershocks from the big quake, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, aftershocks from the big one, 7+ that happened there. So that does not prove one single global chain reaction. I want to make that clear. So please don't fall for that. But it does show why this plate system that we're dealing with today deserves our attention for sure. So the Australian plate is surrounded by some of the most active tectonic zones on Earth. It's to the north, it's colliding with Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. To the northeast, it interacts with the Tonga-Kermadec system. To the south, it meets Antarctica along these long underwater ridges that are there. And today's double earthquake happened along that southern boundary. So while this did not happen underneath a city, it happened on a major piece of Earth's engine. This is how we can call it, right? The Western Indian-Antarctic Ridge is really not just a line on the map, right? It's part of the global mid-ocean ridge system. That is basically the longest volcanic and tectonic structure on Earth. So this is massive, right? These ridges circle the planet like basically the seams on a baseball. So they are where the magma is rising, where the new crust is forming, and where the ocean floor slowly moves away from the ridge over a time frame of millions of years. So many times this process just is not quiet. It can't be quiet, right? But Antarctica itself is not just an ice sheet, right? Sitting at the bottom of the world. It's surrounded by active plate boundaries, underwater ridges, fracture zones, volcanic systems, right? Always the ice gets the headlines, but underneath, the surrounding ocean. That geology is very much alive. So that is not a confirmed catastrophe. That is not a doomsday claim or a prediction. Definitely not. Right now, it is a strong, shallow, double earthquake. I will keep watching this for you guys. I hope you found this interesting. See you in the next one. So much stuff is going on. Mexico, absolutely crazy what happened there in the backyard of a house with barns and animals, and suddenly, watch it. Absolutely crazy. See you. Bye-bye.